Well, no matter what, I promise I'll give more effort than Nikola Jokic did in Game 2 in this podcast. Hopefully, it's a little bit better job than Jamal Murray did. Things are bleak. This is Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us, making this part of your day, being with us every day. Rain or shine, win or loss, good times or bad. We appreciate you guys being with us here on Locked On Nuggets. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. My name's Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. Coming to you after Game 2 of the Western Conference Semifinals series between the Denver Nuggets and a team that is looking like their daddy, the Minnesota Timberwolves. The final 106-80 was not that close. Wolves led by as many as 32 in this game. We're gonna break it down. I'm not gonna pull any punches tonight. That's not the game for that. Series isn't over. I'm not dumb enough. I've been caught by this team enough to know that and seen too many things in sports to think it's over. And this has been done before. Some teams have done this, come back from 0-2. But it's going to be an uphill battle, and everything has to change on Friday night in Game 3. We'll talk about that as well. Mitch Sims says, really thought I'd see a smug Matt Moore. Couple of things. One, you will. There will be a time in which all of my hey guys, a little bit worried about some things and everyone getting mad at me about it. I will come for my vengeance. But it's not just that I get paid to do this, right? It's that I genuinely have covered this league for 17 years now. And I have the most empathy of all for fans. I feel for players, but the players get paid. I feel for front office and coaches, but the coaches and front office people get paid and they have other opportunities. Fans live and die. They live and die with these losses, with these moments, with these roller coasters. They're the most invested parts. And I have decided to commit quite a bit of my time to trying to actually stick up for fans. And so when I host a podcast for Nuggets fans and you had to sit there and watch your team get obliterated in large part because your best player elected not to treat that game with the kind of intensity that it warranted, then I feel for you. We're going to talk about Jokic. We'll talk about Murray. We'll talk about everything. But I do appreciate you guys being with us, especially, man, it's like the chat's bumping right now. It's like 12:47 after the Nuggets got obliterated and folks are hanging out. So this community is amazing. It's great. I'm going to start right here. I was watching Shogun the other night, right? And I was thinking about how it's interesting in that a lot of Asian society is built a lot differently. Like they think about things differently than we do. If you travel abroad, you find these differences, and just like not everybody thinks like the same way as Americans. Our Serbian friends will be quick to remind us of that from time to time. But one of the things that is kind of true is that in almost all human society, there is a top-down structure, and that there are leaders and there are people beneath them, and there are leaders and there's people that help the leaders and they also lead, and then everyone kind of helps together. But no matter how much you try and have like a communal environment, there are always certain structures that develop. And teams are pretty straightforward because that's competitive and you need clear, definitive guidelines. There are leaders in basketball, and the leaders in the NBA are the best players. In college, it's the coaches. That's why they make so much money and have all the power and get all the recognition, way more so than the players, honestly. In the NBA, it's the players. Now, I'm going to talk about how Coach Michael Malone failed this team and why they're in a predicament there, about how bad the coaching has been in the series, because there is a problem there as well. Jamal Murray played badly in Game 2. I mean, badly. He played horrible. He played wretched. He was awful again. Jamal Murray shot 3 of 18 from the field for a -16. 8 points on 16 shots. 13 rebounds, woohoo, 2 assists, 2 steals, and a block. Jamal, I have things to talk about tonight with how he played and the problems, and especially some of the stuff that happened in game with things that were thrown and his behavior after the game, his decision not to speak with the media. And we'll get to those things. But you know what? Jamal Murray tried. Jamal Murray had 18 shots, and that's way too many and doesn't need to be shooting that much. And he was awful. Absolutely. But you know what? Jamal Murray was trying. Jamal Murray efforted. Jamal Murray pushed. Jamal Murray forced the issue, got into the paint, and got blocked over and over and over again, trying to make something happen. Jamal Murray shot a lot because he wasn't able to get separation against a great Wolves defense on one calf and was left with no other option because he was overwhelmed other than trying to get to the moves which create a shot. He wasn't able to run the offense effectively, and that's a problem with his skill, his development, his conditioning, all of these things. But Murray tried. Aaron Gordon tried. Aaron Gordon busted his ass in this game, tried to give the team a lift. Yes, he was shooting threes, but they weren't just settling for jumpers. He shot those with confidence, trying to create separation to space the floor. I thought Michael Porter Jr. played hard. He didn't play well. 4 of 12 from the field, was overwhelmed, didn't play well. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope got burned again, absolutely cooked, shredded, barbecued by Anthony Edwards. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope tried. Nikola Jokic gave up. He gave up early in this one. It's not the first time we've seen it. It won't be the last. I'm forgiving of Jokic when he has bad games because of how great he is. But it starts with him. After the last game, someone in the media asked him about his response to a loss like this. And it was a basic TV reporter question meant to elicit a pretty basic cream puff response. Yeah, we've got to be ready for game 2 on Friday, blah, 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 blah. And what Jokic said, and Brendan Vogt swears that he said this before. I don't remember it, but I trust Brendan that he said this. And what he said was, a loss doesn't motivate me. And after he said that, my ears perked up. Because that's quite the response when you get trounced in your arena in game 1 of a playoff series versus a divisional opponent with a chance to go to the conference finals. When you get soundly outplayed from start to finish. I took note of that. But I was like, hey, you know what? We'll get the best from Joker on Friday because he always kind of steps up and comes through. Jokic, this is a very astute comment from Big Honey here. I can't lie, Jokic seemed disinterested. That's the problem here. Nikola Jokic wasn't interested in competing in this game. I don't care that Jamal Murray's calf was hurt and that he's not able to get separation. I don't care if that's a product of his lack of conditioning. I don't care if that's a product of not taking care of his body well enough, which it might be. I don't have the expertise to say that. I don't care if it wasn't a matter of Jamal's injury, if Jamal's just playing badly. The tone is set by the best player in the world coming into this series. This is what the money's for. All of the stuff getting to be in the Minions commercial, the Despicable Me 4 commercial. All of the cool stuff, all of the money, all of it is in exchange for this is the burden that you have to carry. You don't get to be disinterested in this game. If Jokic had gone out there and played awesome and they had gotten trounced, I wouldn't have held it on him. I would sit here on this show and I would say, hey, Jokic did his thing and the rest of the team was not good enough versus the Wolves. And they're going to have to reckon with that in the offseason, whether that's changing out pieces or swapping out or coaching or whatever else. We would deal with that. But I can't get there because the best player on the Nuggets that specifically this team was built around did not show up to play in this one, did not show up to compete. Let Karl Anthony Towns and Naz Reid take his lunch money and just kind of took it. And that's a real problem. It sucks that Nikola Jokic, like other players can have those nights when they're just like not into it and they're just going through the motions. And they can get away with it because they don't have the ball that much and they're not dependent on. And that sucks. Heavy is the crown. I say this all the time. I say it with Luka Doncic. That's why I tear Anthony Davis to shreds, because he's talked about as an NBA top 75 player of all time. And if that's the bar, I'm going to hold him to it. And if he doesn't meet that, I'm going to comment on it. When Joel Embiid is talked about as an MVP candidate, and he has failed to live up to that. When he's talked about as one of the most dominant players in the league and has playoff flameouts, I don't blame him for this year, but in the previous ones, I've called him to task on it because I believe that you have to do that to have that level of accountability because the fans deserve it. The fans of the game, the fans of the teams, everybody. This one's on Yoke, man. There is no level to which Jamal Murray can be that bad. If you look at that and you're just like, we can't win because Jamal can't get any separation, he can't get into the offense, then take the ball up the floor, man. Like I've seen you do hundreds of times in your career. Get him into the action. Adjust, adapt. Oh, they're going to send a double team? Okay. Whip the pass. There was sequences. Why do you think Justin Holiday's played pretty well in the series? It's because he's ready for those passes. And if Yoke was doing all that, if he was setting the tone, if he was hitting first and forcing the double and sending those passes and the Nuggets just missed shots, the conversation looks entirely different. The conversation's about like, okay, game one was tough. You couldn't execute down the stretch in clutch time. This one, you just couldn't hit shots. And that's the conversation we're having. But that's not what happened. And I'm very big on the accuracy. That's what's got to be. There's got to be accountability there. And look, the Wolves have played him awesome. But also, I'll say this. Anthony Edwards sat there in that postgame. I sat there and watched Anthony Edwards postgame say, man, huge shout out to Naz Reid and Karl Anthony Towns, man. They were able to play one-on-one defense, so we didn't have to send help. We didn't have to send help. No Rudy Gobert. Didn't have to send help. It's not good enough. It's a leadership problem. That was the Nuggets' problem in game 2. It wasn't shooting. It wasn't sets. It wasn't coaching. It wasn't rotations. It was leadership. That was what was missing in game 2. Now, all the other stuff sucked too, and we'll talk about that a little bit more up next here on Locked On Nuggets. Today's show is brought to you by BetterHelp. Not kidding. BetterHelp. Best way for you to be able to get therapy with the kind of help that you need. It's really important in this time for you to be able to get that kind of help that you need. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off our chest, big or small. Certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased on your life. So today I want to talk about how I really feel about something. You might even be thinking the same thing this week. I have sat here on this show twice and I have defended Jamal Murray to a certain degree. I have admitted he's played badly, but I've also defended him. Jamal walked out on media again tonight, and that's fine. I actually don't have that big of a problem with it. I think from the player's perspective, it's if I've played badly, why do you want to talk to me? I will say that it does throw some of these things, I think, into question in terms of like his prior behavior. It's none of this looks good, and that's a problem. And it does affect other people. When athletes don't show media any respect whatsoever, it does wind up affecting the work, which can affect mental health stuff. It's all a trickle-down effect. You're just contributing to somebody else having a rotten day. Don't contribute to other people having a rotten day. That's important. And if you have other people that are contributing to you having a rotten day, you should be able to deal with it by talking to BetterHelp, because everybody's got problems. Therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports team. And it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. We'll be right back here on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making this part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us here on a Tuesday. Recording this 12:58 a.m. Chat's bumping. You guys are incredible. Charlie wants to know if the Nuggets can come back. They can. They can. You win game 3, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, because now it's the Wolves still have home court advantage, right? But if you win game, it puts the doubt in their mind. You need them to bleed. You need them to bleed. You got to win game 3 to give yourself a chance. 0-3, and I just do not think that any team is going to come back. I just don't think that mentally teams have enough resilience to come back from it. I don't think any team has that kind of resilience. If the Nuggets did it, it would be more impressive than 3-1 comebacks, and it would be not the greatest comeback of all time, because that's still going to be the Cavaliers over the Warriors down 3-1 when that team won 73 games, but it would be pretty amazing. It would be in the top 5, and that would be very exciting. But all that's going to have to start with like guys actually stepping up and doing the work here, and particularly it's going to have to start with Jokic setting the tone. We'll talk about Murray here a little bit. So I've talked about Murray from the perspective of he's hurt, and on Sunday he met with the media and he talked about how like, hey, I'm not making excuses, but I know I've got to deal with it. And the team seemed to recognize that, and yet none of the game plan altered around that. And some of that, like I said, it's as simple as if they are picking up Jamal with the kind of defense that Jaden McDaniels is at half court, and they're digging the Nuggets into this hole, Jamal can't dribble to the spots to send the ball in sets. He can't get space to get the outlet pass there. Like the Wolves were doing, like I've wrote about this for Action Network. The Wolves contested not just every possession. They contested every dribble, every step, every jab step, every shoulder, every bump, every move, every cut, every dribble. They challenged everything. Every pass was getting hit by hands on the way out and on the way there. Every shot had multiple people contesting it. It was an absolute beatdown. And yeah, it was physical. And I will say this, I understand why the fans are upset with all the officiating, but the thing is, like, they called it pretty consistently. I know that was the kind of the complaint tonight. I don't think it was. Like, I think they were pretty consistent, which is they let a lot of contact go. And that was why, like, Murray started openly fouling them and then, like, being like, oh, you're not going to call that? And then being like, oh, I guess you're not going to call that. No, they're not going to call it, man. Like, that crew set a tone early of, hey, anything goes here. You get away with it. Like, there were some possessions where, like, Karl Anthony Towns would get a call, or Anthony Edwards or whoever. But, like, in general, no. Like, this game was officiated one way, which is it was officiated with a 90s style. And Denver was so out of sorts with it. Jamal in particular. Which is why he threw a heating pad on the court during play. After the game, the pool reporter asked the officials about that sequence, and he said that had he seen that Jamal Murray was the one that threw the heating pad, he would have been given a technical and not ejected. That has led to some conversation of like, oh, so he won't be he's suspended for game 3. Don't be sure, because he threw an object into play while the game was still going on. Like, they were not in a timeout, right? It was in a stoppage, but they were not in a timeout, and he threw that bag. The league is going to take that seriously. You can't be throwing stuff, man. You can't be throwing stuff. Like, I would not be surprised if the league office is way more disciplinary than the officials were. Maybe he just gets a fine. That's the most likely outcome, is he just gets a fine. But it puts things into risk, and it signifies a lack of composure, which Malone talked about. They just did not ever have any sort of composure. There's a lot of conversation about Malone's move. I'll just tell you, like, look, Malone recognized how that game had started and was going, and was trying to light a fire. He wanted a tee at least, if not to get thrown out. And if that happens, yes, it's like Malone can't get thrown out there. It's a playoff game, but it lights a fire because, quite honestly, one of the big problems that the Nuggets are facing right now is that they are coming out completely flat and unprepared to play. They have done that now for 6 straight playoff games. And I'm a guy that has lauded Michael Malone consistently, has talked about how good he is, has talked about how much more recognition he deserves for the contributions to building this franchise, for the contributions for what he's done for developing guys like Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. and so on, for instilling the culture, for going past their win total every single year and by the market standard. But I will tell you, like, I have concerns that the Nuggets are not listening right now, that his message is not getting through. Because this is the 6th straight time they have come out and gotten down double digits early. That's a problem. That's a huge issue. And that's going to have to be kind of considered. Mitch asked, Matt, at what point do we start saying the Nuggets aren't as good as the Wolves and that they're not ready? I don't know that they're not ready. I do think, I will say that I am of the belief that the chase for the 1 seed cost them. They look like a tired team. One of the reasons I've talked about the peak and early stuff so much in the past, and I've had all these conversations, one of the reasons that I've talked about those things is because I have seen them from other teams where teams will look awesome at certain points of the season and not just like regular season good, like playoff championship level good. And then they get to the playoffs and they just don't have it. And it's because like that level of play is something very ephemeral and it's hard to kind of grasp. You can't just, that was the idea, right? Flip the switch. You know, I made the allegory and the analogy rather in my column of the Timberwolves ripped the switch out of the wall and then threw water on it, starting an electrical fire and burned the house down. Like that switch is doomed. So that's like a real, I think, thing to kind of consider here. Grace asked, how are the Celtics able to maintain level all season? They went very hard, but they didn't. Well, no, they played at a very high level. They were not like pushing. The Nuggets did this thing this season where like they would push and then back off and then push and then back off. Schedule was really dense at the early part of the season, so they pushed through it. And that kind of cost them through the month of December. And then they pushed really hard out of the All-Star break. And then they just kept trying to keep that going. They were really addicted to how they played after All-Star. And what they probably in hindsight, it's easy to say in hindsight, what they needed to do was after they made that big push after All-Star, be like, all right, we've proven our point. We know that we can play at this championship level. Let's get everybody healthy. But they didn't. They kept pushing for that 1 seed because they thought they could do both. They really thought that they could be like, no, we'll just get to the end of the season and we'll have the 1 seed and we'll have all of it. And I do think it took something out of them. And that's like a real problem, which I think is an issue. So Hurricane says, feels like Malone going down double digits in 7 straight playoff games is a sign of bad coaching. Somewhere along the line, there's got to be a bad game plan or two. I don't know how you look at this and go like, oh, it's a game plan, man. Like, is the game plan assumes that Nikola Jokic is going to like try and is going to be interested in being the best player on the court, which he has not done at all. Are there tactical things they could change up? Yeah. I mean, I'll say this, like, this is where the Project Dynasty stuff takes a hit. They relied on Reggie Jackson as the only like, okay, well, if in case of emergency, we'll have Reggie. Okay. And everyone forgets, but Reggie played really well in November. And there was like, Adam was talking about 6th man of the year. That's how well he was playing. Like he was playing really well. You have to have options. Like you have to have alternatives. And the Nuggets didn't build any for themselves. Like Jalen Pickett isn't ready. He's just not. Like he needed to play in the G League. If he was ready, the coaches would have been like, yeah, no, he can come up and contribute. Give him some time. That's not where he's at. They don't have another ball handler. Like tonight, the entire time I kept thinking about if they just had Bruce Brown to be able to just speed the ball up and get them into their sets. Even if it's just like running hard at the rim to get them to back off so you can get yourself set up. How big that would be. Just Bruce next to Jamal. Just having that option, how big that would be. But they didn't have it. They only had Reggie. And this is why I've been complaining about all of the criticism of Reggie Jackson, which is I'm like, you can't expect Reggie to hold up the role that he is. And now, quite honestly, the problem is that Jamal is having to, when he's injured, hold up even more because of how the Wolves are adapting and pressuring him. And it's this cascading effect. And there's not really a counter. Like, there's not really a counter. The counter is like Nikola Jokic needs to take over and whip ass and be the best player on the floor. And he hasn't done that one single time. I want to talk about this razor burn because this is something that some folks have said. Vlatko would help. Guys, I like Vlatko. He's a fun player. No. You were down 32 in this game. Vlatko Cancar is not the secret here. The problem is that Aaron Gordon was minus 33. Nikola Jokic is minus 16. Michael Porter Jr. was minus 21. The starters are getting killed. It does not matter. Now, would having like a bench player to come in and add some redundancy, would that help? Sure, absolutely. 100%. But Vlatko Čančar is not gonna help this. That's not it. It's not, and that's not honestly fair to Vlatko to like be like, oh, me, if we did that. They did need they needed some more veterans. That's definitely true. And like they knew the cost of that, and they knew this might be the outcome. But it's a real issue. On the other side, I want to talk about the well of leadership and how it's been kind of poisoned, what the Nuggets can do going forward. We'll touch on that. We're going to have a long time between now and game 3, so we'll touch on that a lot more later in the week, but we'll start talking about it up next here on Locked On Nuggets. Don't forget that this Sunday is Mother's Day, and the best way for you to take care of all of your stuff that you need to get her is with DoorDash. You can get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flour, convenience, or grocery order at DoorDash. So I've talked about my mom being in the hospital, but definitely you can't not get your mom stuff for Mother's Day when she's in the hospital. You got to get her extra stuff then. I've looked at all the stuff on DoorDash, and there's so much good stuff that I can send her as she's moving into a rehab facility. So I'm excited for that, and we'll be taking care of that through DoorDash. It's absolutely phenomenal. You can try a bookstore gift card. Does she love a good latte? How about to get a gift card to her favorite coffee shop? You can't go wrong. You can get thoughtful gifts she deserves with the convenience that you need. Choose same-day delivery or schedule a week ahead for when flowers and gifts should arrive to her door with DoorDash. Get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place, and get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flour, convenience, grocery, or retail order now with code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Mitch is asking for some hopium. Yeah, so I will tell you this. Every single time that I bury this team, they come back and absolutely make me look like an ass. So that's the upside here. Is like I'm trying not to bury them because I don't want to look stupid again. But if I do, you can be sure that they will come back and make me look dumb, because that's what this team has done over and over and over again. I'll say this. I do think that so much of this is about the Wolves have punched them first over and over and over again. I thought a lot about this during the game, that the Nuggets have approached these games like they just want to like set. And I've seen this before. You'll see it in the regular season. It sometimes happens in the playoffs where a team will come in and they'll be ready for like a big series. It's like, oh, this is going to be a great series. That team's so good. We got to be ready for it. But they also come in with kind of this like, we know we can play with them, and like we're just going to ease in and just kind of like, all right, we'll just go into our sets and like not really, we'll wait and kind of ramp up. And the Wolves come in and are just like, we're going for your throat. First possession, every possession from start to finish. The second that you get control of the ball, we are going to go after you. And the minute that we get the ball from you, we're going the other direction and we're going to run it down your throat. Like they have hit first in not just every game. They've hit first on every single possession. They're still hitting first when the Nuggets are down 25. That's a massive problem, but that's also stuff that Denver can fix. Denver can hit first. And if you're like, well, how if they can't even get into their sets? Again, it's going to have to start with Nikola Jokic. And I'm sorry for however inconvenient that is for the soon-to-be 3-time MVP on Thursday, but that's just the way it's going to have to be. Because there were lots of moments in this game where he could have attacked more. And I will say this, some of these, like he attacked, and Karl-Anthony Towns and Naz Reid just blocked him or defended him, made him miss. He's got to get to those shots. He's got to play better. Because once you start doing that, everything's going to open up. But you got to get downhill. You got to attack them first. And like, that's a big, big deal. Kratogvilajek says Murray hitting the 2-game winners hurt the Nuggets. Now he's got confidence to continue shooting bricks even when he's 1 of 10. I will say this, that in those games, he said very openly, I thought, like, I started to say, hey, be ready. I'm going to find you. He was going to adapt his game, and his teammates told him to keep shooting. That's what they wanted. Now we're at a point where it's been so many games, the coaching staff and very honestly, Nikola Jokic has to be like, hey, we got to adjust right now. You can't be you. It's okay. We can find ways for you to be effective. Like Jamal needs to be a spot up guy. The problem is they don't have any other guys that can handle the rock. They don't even really have guys that can run dribble handoffs. Like Michael Porter Jr., this is the point of the problem, is that MPJ's never really developed this part of his game. And if you want to blame the coaching staff for that, I don't mind it. But like they don't have that ability. You can't really run KCP handoffs. You could do I'm sorry to say this, you could have done it with Bruce Brown. Now, I want to be very clear. They could not have kept Bruce Brown. That's not their fault. Okay. They needed something to replace that. And it wasn't Reggie. And that's a huge problem. But look, they still have ways to be able to compete. Keystone Noak says, you do not understand Nikola. He is what he does. Honest, willing or better. Finals against Wolves will make a difference. Spurs lost bites us now. I'm sorry, but like, I'll say this. I think if Joker is just like, look, we just can't beat this team if Jamal's like this, that's not acceptable. You don't get to do that in the NBA. Maybe some other leagues you can do that. You don't get to do that in the NBA. That's a problem. So that's like a real issue. From the coaching standpoint, Malone took the blame. Like Malone knows that he's getting out coached. The problem for me is that if this was an X's and O's deal, it would be different. But this isn't X's and O's. It's effort. It's effort and preparation. I was worried when last week the Nuggets I guess they had the whole week off. They eliminated the Lakers on Monday, and game one didn't start till Saturday. And they came in. They had Tuesday off. Expected them to have Tuesday off. Wednesday, he spoke with the media, and he was like, "Yeah, we didn't really do much. Just kind of ease back in, did a little bit of stuff, like started to install a few things." And I was like, huh, because like you needed to hit the ground running. And that kind of tells you that physically the staff felt that they couldn't do that they couldn't just like put them through the paces and put them through a really hard practice. And that to me is like indicative of the exhaustion from this season. That to me is like where it's at. I also want to point this out. There's gonna be a lot of conversation about the Spurs game, 81, right? Them losing that game because they would have avoided the Wolves if they won that game. They would have gotten the 1 seed. The Spurs loss is representative of who this team was this year, even as they got the 1 seed and tied the most wins in franchise history. It was indicative of where they were at and how they were trying to manage things and do all things at once. It was not the cause, it was a symptom. So, again, fantastic regular season, tied the most wins in franchise history, tied for the 1 seed, lost on a tiebreaker. However, they lost that game because of hubris. Like they were up big and just let it go because they keep assuming that they'll have enough, and they tested that too many times. And it's really caught them in the series because for whatever reason in these playoffs, they've been like, we'll just kind of like ease in and find a way. You have to hit first. They jumped on teams last year. They jumped on the Wolves in game 1 because I had questions about them after that March. I was like, man, I don't know. They've looked like garbage for the whole last month of March. And I got away from everything I believe about March basketball. Everything. I was worried about them. And then in the first quarter of game 1, I was like, oh, they're like ready. Oh. And they did the same thing to the Suns, and they did the same things to the Lakers. Like the Nuggets jumped on all 3 teams in the Western Conference playoffs last year. They haven't jumped on anybody this year. And that's a real big problem. And to me, it does really seem like hubris. That there was a belief of like, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Because they pulled off all these comebacks this year versus the Lakers and the Warriors. They had a sub 500 record versus the top 6 teams in the West. And I pointed that out, but it was still like, yeah, but like, okay, well, with the regular season schedule, blah, 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 blah. Minnesota led this season series. They clinched tiebreaker because of division record. They went up 2-1, right? And then the Nuggets wind up winning the last one when the Wolves were on a back-to-back. But like Minnesota sent this signal early. Minnesota sent this signal all year. Like, hey, we're coming. We're coming. And Denver really did kind of act like, yeah, well, you're good. Yeah. And they gave them a lot of credit. And I'll also say this, credit to, I haven't talked about this. The Wolves were phenomenal. Like this is legitimately factoring for pace and space and the era that we live in terms of offensive talent. This might be the best defense that I've seen since the 90s. Like it really is. Like I think it's up there with the 08 Celtics. That's how good I think it is. 15 Warriors. Like they're insane. And they deserve all the credit in the world. And after the game, Ant has all this opportunity with his star power, and he can like rub this in and talk as much crap as he wants. And instead he's just like, they asked him like about game 3, and he's like, no, man, they're coming like today. Ant was like, they just missed shots tonight, man. They're going to be back. We know that they're going to punch, but we're going to punch too. It's like the exact right thing to say. Like Ant gets it where he's like, yeah, we know that we have to be ready for their punch, but they have to be ready for ours. We're going to hit first. Like, that's what you want to hear. Not a loss doesn't motivate me. I guess we'll see. Which is what we got from Joker. He literally was like, I don't know. We'll see. Your fans just booed you off the floor, man. And even if he comes out and they win this series, I think it's a bummer that the fans have to hear their best player not be like, I will avenge this, right? I will like, I care that this sucked for you. That's hard. It's really hard. All right. So Denver's down 0-2. Game 5 is Friday. We will talk this week about how the Nuggets can recover, about what went wrong, about what they're supposed to do with Jamal Murray, about how to try and get back in this series. And if they can't, well, we'll start having some pretty hard conversations about the summer. We'll do that this week. Thanks for joining me. Appreciate you guys being with us. Make sure to check out Swipe It later today on Tuesday. We'll talk to you guys again next time on Locked On Nuggets.